Hi everyone, Melanie here and welcome back to my channel. I'd like to discuss a question that I get asked often from my clients, from people emailing me, but my partner is spiritual, my partner meditates, then how come they're acting like this? And absolutely, meditation and practicing mindfulness in general can be a way to evolve as a person. But just because your partner says that they're meditating doesn't actually mean that they are. And even if they are meditating, it means different things to different people. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are a more conscientious person. Beliefs are one thing, but actions are another thing. And in my opinion, it's more important in the moment to be mindful of how you're being rather than sitting down meditating and then still acting the way you do when you're in a conflict. So let's start by clarifying what I mean by meditation, what I mean by spiritual, what I mean by mindfulness. Okay, and we're all spiritual beings having a human experience, at least in my opinion anyway. So to call yourself spiritual, I take it to mean that you are consciously aware that you are this spiritual being and you're self-realizing, self-actualizing, however you want to call it. You are mindfully becoming a more evolved person where you're self-realizing. It's basically about growing up. It's going from immature to mature, elevating your consciousness, becoming a wiser person who can pierce through the veil of illusion, who can see through bullshit, who can see truth. To me, this is what a more evolved person is like. And absolutely, meditation can help you get there. However, and a big however, just because someone is meditating doesn't mean that they are suddenly automatically a more evolved person. And in my opinion, I think it's more important to be more mindful in your daily life rather than be setting time aside every day to sit down and meditate. So mindfulness is learning to use your mind effectively, right? To be self-aware in the moment, to be mindful of how you are being in any given moment. Meditation is a tool to help you become more mindful. And absolutely, this can be you sitting down for a certain period of time and trying not to think, observing your thoughts more likely. Now, the point of meditation is to practice letting go of your attachments to your thoughts, to your feelings, to your physicality, and most importantly, to your stories, to your sense of self, to the false self, to your judgments. People who are quite dysfunctional, immature, personality disordered, for example, they can be really rigid in their beliefs. Meditation is meant to help loosen up these beliefs, to help you question your attachments to them, because ultimately it is our attachments that cause suffering. So mindfulness is meant to help us become aware in the moment of how we are being, because when we do this, we are then given an opportunity to do something different, to choose, rather than to be reactive, to choose how you wish to think, to feel, and to behave. So I hear quite often from my clients that they have a partner who's a yoga instructor or a counselor, something in the field of personal development, and perhaps they really have worked on themselves and they are better than how they used to be. However, there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy in what they say they are doing and their beliefs and how they are treating you in the moment. And this is why I'm saying, just because your partner says that they are meditating, that they are living a spiritual experience, doesn't actually mean that they are doing this. Because as I said earlier, really it's about seeing truth, piercing through the veil of illusion about other people and about yourself. And a lot of personality disordered people aren't stable to see the truth within themselves. I talk about this in previous videos, so I'm not going to go into it here. Just to say that people can still be taking ayahuasca, going to ceremonies, doing all sorts of plant medicine, hanging out with other spiritual people, and they are still the same. Okay, sometimes this can become like an act of virtue signaling to the other person. Look, aren't I virtuous? I'm doing the things that are meant to be making me a more evolved person, a more conscientious person. But it's like, it's for show. And they are telling themselves this, but they're not actually living this way. Until someone can see the truth in themselves and take accountability and take responsibility for how they are being, right? This, to me, is a mark of maturity, to be able to internalize your locus of control. If your partner is constantly blaming you or others, situations or whatever, it's other people's fault that they are acting this way, they haven't evolved as a person. They are still quite immature because they are still externalizing the locus of control. And you can call yourself a yoga instructor, you can say you meditate, you can have a job as a counselor, as a therapist, and if you are still externalizing your locus of control, you're still disempowered. How are you going to change if you're expecting other people to change so that you can be a better person? This isn't a mark of maturity at all. I am a fan of meditation, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's necessary to be spending hours meditating. And in fact, some people that I've spoken to who have told me, oh yeah, I spend hours meditating, it's easy. And turns out that they just like to get high and just lie in the bathtub. I mean, that's just getting high. If meditation is easy, then you're not really meditating. It's actually really difficult to observe your thoughts and let them go. And by the way, on a side note, smoking weed makes meditation very hard, because when you're high, you're going to get more thoughts popping into your head. And if the act of meditation is to observe your thoughts and detach and let go, you're making life a lot harder for yourself if you're stoned. Just a side thought here. So people who say that they meditate for long periods of time, that's easy for them, I don't know, to me, I'm suspicious when someone says that, because it's hard, all right? Your mind will always have thoughts. It's just always going to happen. And it takes a lot of practice to be able to witness your thoughts, observe them, and choose to let them go. It takes a lot of practice to do this. And it's difficult to do this as well, especially as we live in a world that encourages overthinking and just being busy. So our minds often are very busy. This is why I personally advocate just meditating for 15-20 minutes as a way to better understand the kind of thoughts that you have, so you can discern which thoughts are just like impulses from habits, which thoughts are intuition, which thoughts are fear-based. You know, we have different kinds of thoughts. So meditation creates a space which we can go within and observe our thoughts to better differentiate what's this and what's that. And again, that takes time and practice to do so. However, in my opinion, when it comes to change, I honestly think that being mindful in the moment is way more important than setting time down to meditate. What do I mean by becoming mindful in the moment? When you're having an argument with someone and you feel your anger boil up, and a habit perhaps is to point the finger and blame, or to put the other person down. To be mindful is to catch yourself when you are being this way, to be aware of how you are escalating and think, hang on, do I want to be doing this? One needs to be willing to look at oneself, to pause in the moment and think, hang on, how is it serving me? Is this right? Should I be doing this? Should I be thinking this? Should I be saying this? Maybe I need a time out to gather my thoughts together. Maybe I'm in the wrong here. If you aren't doing this, if instead you are just getting into old habits where you react a certain way, where you're still reactive, then all the meditation that you've done in the past isn't really helping if in the moment you are still being reactive and still going into habits. To be able to stop and pause, maybe take a time out, is a lot more effective, in my opinion, than meditating when you're in a good mood. To be practicing the skills of mindfulness when it's challenging is, in my opinion, a lot more important and necessary to do. So if your partner, who claims to be very spiritual and have worked on themselves and meditates a lot and reads all these books, but in the moment this person continues to be a hypocrite and blames you and projects their shadow onto you, how evolved is this person? I tell you, a lot of people, and it's not just in the New Age community, but I'm going to give you an example. Within the New Age communities, there's a lot of people with Peter Pan complexes, right? Like in Peter Pan with the Lost Boys, Neverland, and in Neverland, they don't grow up and they don't have shadows. Symbolically, our shadow, right? We need to integrate this. We need to face our shadow. We need to see our own dark side. We need to look within ourselves and see the aspects of ourselves that we don't like in order to integrate it, in order to become a more whole person. And then we grow up. Right? There's a reason why the lost boys who didn't have shadows didn't grow up, because they don't have a shadow, which seems to be, in my opinion, kind of a common thing in the New Age communities, like denial of anything negative, like running away from your shadow and avoiding people who challenge you. And this is why I'm making this video, because I have these heartbroken clients who are saying, well, why is it that my seemingly sweet spiritual partner, as soon as I started calling them out on their hypocrisy, they just ditched me and moved on to another person? Right? What did I do wrong? I thought this person was a lot more evolved than how they're acting. Now is the time to dethrone your partner. It is totally natural, and it happens a lot, to elevate your partner. And especially if they're in a job which is like in the healing profession or personal development profession, it's easy to think, well, they must know what they're talking about because they're doing this job, or they have these hobbies which they seem to be really into. Therefore, I guess they're right and I'm wrong. Just because someone is a counselor, therapist, yoga teacher, mindfulness instructor, doesn't actually mean that they are a more conscientious person. It doesn't mean that they are more evolved. They may know things, but it doesn't mean that they're actually changing as a person. And quite often people will get into these professions, like with counseling, for example, as a way to understand others, but not really look at themselves. So it helps to dethrone your partner in order to see them clearly, to help you see the situation more truthfully, which in turn can help you move on, or at least give you more information about what to do next. When we are elevating our partners, it's hard to move on because we are dealing with a lot of cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, they're so great, it must be me. But on the other hand, you're dealing with the anger at how you're being mistreated, how you feel like this is abuse that you're experiencing, and yet this is constantly being denied. So to see the situation truthfully will set you free. To see your partner truthfully, it will set you free. But there needs to be a willingness to do so. One needs to be willing to see the truth within themselves and within others. So listen, you can go to all the ayahuasca ceremonies, you can buy books, you can go to workshops, you can get qualifications, but just doing this doesn't mean that you are going to become a more conscientious person. Really, it's practicing mindfulness in the moment, observing yourself and questioning, do I want to be doing this? To become a more evolved person is to look within, to integrate your shadow, to stop blaming others, to internalize your locus of control. To want to mature as a person means to sit with the shame and guilt and remorse about how you've been and wanting to improve as a person, to become more independent like this, rather than relying on other people to boost your ego or to blame. And I find that often in these spiritual communities, there's a lot of enabling going on. Like boundaries are seen as a no-no and negative. And so often people just end up just saying, yes, yes, you are amazing. And yes, yes, you go, girl. Or, don't listen to that person. You're right, they're wrong. And to be fair, this happens in all communities anyway. But I do see, in particular in New Age communities, that boundaries are seen as a bad thing, and that people who are challenging you or aren't agreeing to what you're saying are seen as negative, and then you can be ditched. If you want to grow up as a person, if you want to evolve, it is a daily practice of catching yourself in the moment where you're acting in a way that is no longer serving you and choosing a different way. It requires letting go of your attachments to your beliefs, to your sense of self, basically getting over yourself. And I have seen in the past, in my personal life, a lot of people who have followed a shamanistic lifestyle, who have gone to Peru and had training to be doing ayahuasca ceremonies and eating vegan food and doing workshops. And yet they are still a bit of a dickhead. They're just not good people. And they've got their heads right up their own asses that it's just embarrassing to see. And you think, how can someone who is into these practices that is meant to break down your sense of self, that is meant to dismantle the ego, how is it that it's still keeping you so inflated? How is it that these practices are still keeping your narcissism in place. Well, there you go. I mean, if you aren't willing to truly see yourself, then it's possible that you can still be inflating your false self. Perhaps some people are just doing these activities to tick a box, to say, yes, I'm ticking the box of meditating today and doing good, as a form of virtue signaling to others and perhaps to themselves, but they're not actually doing the work. It's like being done at surface level. And look, listen, meditation means a lot of things to different people. As I said earlier, to meditate, in my opinion, is to observe your thoughts and to let go of your attachment to your thoughts, to better get to know your thoughts and then choose to let them go. It's a practice of letting go of your attachments. And if you find that your partner says that they're doing this and yet they are still very rigid in their judgments towards you, if they won't let things go, then are they really letting go of their attachments? I mean, what are they doing then when they say they're meditating? This is why I think just because someone says they meditate doesn't actually mean they're doing it properly and that they're actually changing as a person. It could just be this thing that they're telling themselves that they're doing so they can continue telling themselves that I'm a good person, I'm a virtuous person, therefore I'm entitled to keep acting this way. And that's just it. All right? When one's pride and one's sense of entitlement gets in the way, that they aren't willing to practice what they perhaps are learning. When in the moment that they are being challenged and they continue to act in an entitled, angry, even abusive way because they feel entitled to be this way. So how is meditation actually helping them to be a more evolved person if their sense of entitlement kicks in when they're having a confrontation and they continue to act as a bully, for example? Or but because they are a spiritual person, they can't possibly be a bully. Just because this person is vulnerable, sweet, softly spoken, they can't be a bully. So really then the issue must be with me. You won't believe how often I hear this from my clients. Okay, just because someone is living a spiritual lifestyle doesn't mean that they're actually a decent person. Being a spiritual person doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good person, okay? Being a conscientious person, I think, is important here, and that is being aware in the moment of how you're being. And it's only when we do this that we can choose to act differently. And like I said, one sense of entitlement often can kick in and think, no, why should I change? The other person is at fault here. They should change. And really it's facing this and questioning yourself, well, hang on, what is this voice? Why am I thinking this way? When someone can get into a habit of questioning themselves and really breaking themselves down and putting their pride to one side and getting over themselves in that sense, then someone can actually improve. Someone can change. But until they're willing to do that, can they change? Unless you are willing to look at yourself honestly and take accountability and responsibility for the way you have been, then meditating is not going to change anything. For as long as you are attached to your false sense of self, then you won't evolve, okay? All the meditating isn't going to help if it's just feeding delusions of grandiosity. So I'm going to leave it here because my cat is meowing and it's getting a bit distracting. I hope that you found this useful, and if it's brought up food for thought, I'd love to hear from you. Share with me, like, can you relate to this? What are your thoughts on this? You know, if you think I'm wrong, tell me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And if perhaps you can relate and you need some assistance with moving on or just need help making sense of what's going on in your relationship, please give me an email. I'd love to help. My email address is in the video description, and I'll leave it there. So until next time, bye for now.